And now, the worldwide phenomenon. One records in Stowmarket, the other records in Houston. Alex Moss, Burton, DeWitt join forces to bring you the weekly Dartscast 180.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the weekly Dartscast in association with Darts Corner. I'm Alex Moss, and joining me as always, the darts statistician, not the darts tipster after last week, unfortunately, but I'm sure he's going to bounce back. It is, of course, Burton DeWitt. How are you doing?
I mean, Mensah Suljovic just beat Michael Van Gerwen, so I don't know how I could possibly do any better. Tips be damned, they don't matter. But a gentle win over a mighty Mike always matters. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing well here, thank you. A pretty good weekend. My teams, Colchester and Stowmarket, didn't lose. Obviously helped that neither of them played at the weekend, but also a nice winner on the darts. But lots to bring you on the show this week. We're going to be joined by the newly crowned UK Open champion, Dimitri van der Bergh. He's going to be calling in, as will his manager, Mac Elkin, which that might be a first for us on the show, having the major winner from the weekend and their manager on the show together. But before we bring you those chats, let's start with our look back at the UK Open. Dimitri van der Bergh beating Luke Humphries 11-10 in Sunday night's final to become a two-time major winner. We previewed the UK Open last week and we discussed if this was going to be the year that the UK Open went back to one of the elite. But is this Dimitri putting himself back amongst that elite group of players with this win?
I think it's too soon to say that, but he certainly has put himself in that next tier of players. And, you mentioned, his second major, you mentioned tips. And if we go back to his first major now, nearly 4 years ago in the middle of lockdown, before we did tip of the year, I half jokingly, but I kept telling Mac, asking him if after Dimmy wins the World Match Play, if we can get him on. And I started saying that a few weeks before the event. And what happened? He went and won it. So I think that's the tip in the show's history, because I had called it just as a joke a couple weeks before, but I did not call Dimitri van der Bergh winning the UK Open. I didn't even have him on my radar. And I don't think I was wrong not to have him on my radar, even if in the end I was wrong to not pick him because he did win, because there was nothing to indicate that this is where his game was going entering into Minehead. You look back at the World Championships blowing a 2-set lead against Florian Hempel. You look at most of his matches on television after the UK Open last year, as well as a regression in the Euro Tour and the Players Championships. He'd made a clear step backwards over the previous 9 months, if not multiple steps backwards. After, he hadn't reached the heights since winning the World Match Play in 2020 and making the final in 2021. But still, for a good few years, he was in that elite or that second tier. That's why he made it to 2 Premier Leagues. That's why he was in the conversation another time. He wasn't in the conversation this year. He wasn't even in that second tier of the conversation because he had taken those clear steps backwards. And even though he made the semifinals in Milton Keynes at the Masters, he was one of the weakest players that week. He was consistent between 88 and 91 every match, but that is very, very rarely going to make the semifinals of a major. That very rarely will win more than one match, let alone 3. And he was fortunate in that. And he hasn't been lighting up the averages in the Players' Championship events this year. He is 25th in averages, which is fairly good. Obviously, anything top 32 is good. And I think that 25th is a little bit of an understatement because he was very poor the first weekend with an 87 and a 90 average. So since then, he's averaging more like a top 16 level. But top 16, again, is not elite. But he was, if not elite, pretty close to it in Minehead. Outside the match against Johnny Clayton where he averaged 90, he did in every match that thing that we talked about last year that you need to do in a major. Every match between 93 and in one case 99. And the 93 was in essence a 94. So I should say every match between 94 and nearly 100 with the exception of that Johnny Clayton. Nearly a ton against Brendan Dolan. Nearly 94 against Martin Lukeman, who we'll come on to in the next question. 96 and change against Damon Heta, who we'll also talk about in the next question. And 95 against Luke Humphries in the final. And he did let Luke back in that match. He was 7-2 up. He went off the boil a little bit. Luke upped his game as well and missed a bunch of darts at tops and several different legs that could have kept pulling away. But in the end, he hit when he needed to, and he won it. And he was, outside of that match against Johnny Clayton, consistently at a match and tournament winning level across the weekend. I'm not going to say he's back to the elite quite yet. There's been too many negatives over the last 9 months to say one title, even if it was an impressive title, puts him back among the elites. But it's at least, after multiple steps backwards, a giant leap forward. And even if it's not, it's still a major title. No one's going to say, well, I would rather not have done that. It was a great weekend for him, and a well-needed one to get him back up to world number 7.
Yeah, it certainly was a much-needed win, and it's an interesting question. And you mentioned that first major title that Dimitri van den Bergh won, the World Match Play in 2020. We go back to then, the world was a very different place. The world of darts was as well, and his win kind of opened the floodgates for these new first-time major winners, and that's carried on with the return of crowds and into this year as well. We've seen Stephen Bunting winning the Masters as well, his first major in the PDC. But that one for Dimitri back then, it did feel like a pivotal moment in his career. And if you'd have said back then, the next 3.5 years coming into 2024, he would still be on the same number of majors, you probably would have raised an eyebrow at that statement. And I wouldn't say Dimitri was in the darting doldrums as such heading into this UK Open. He was still inside that top 16. He just made that semi-final of the Masters, although he hadn't played amazingly well. We weren't saying how well he was playing, but no one was talking about him amongst that elite group of players that he'd been in for a while before that. And we spoke about that elite last week, the Premier League players, Gary Anderson, Ryan Searle, the form that they'd shown on the floor events this year. Dimitri's name didn't come up, and the odds for the UK Open a lot higher because of the nature of the event, but 66-1 at the start of the weekend. That shows you that he wasn't someone that people were putting in that conversation to go all the way. And at the weekend, we saw it though, Dimitri van den Bergh, he has put himself back in that picture. And okay, maybe not at that very top level, but there wasn't the eye-catching 100-plus averages that we regularly see from the likes of Luke Humphries and Luke Littler. But what we did see from him was that game, and you mentioned it there, that those 90 averages between 93 and 99 for the most part, apart from that one game. That game, and you add in the timing as well of certain shots, it can be very hard to beat. And aside from that, he was operating at a high level. You look at the legs that he won, the 62 legs, 44 of them he won in 15 darts or less, and that gives you that 100 average, 15 darts or less. So you don't have to produce it every single leg to win matches, but we know that to put a run clip of about 70 to 71%, 15 darts or below, is going to make you a very tough nut to crack. And I think the mental strength as well that he showed over the weekend, and we can look to the final, and we could probably spend half an hour talking about the ups and downs in that one match alone. But you also add in the semi-final with Damon Heta overcoming that rocky start to win that game. The early rounds as well, away from the main stage in that multi-board room. He had some battles with Brendan Dolan, Vincent van der Voort. So there's probably been times since the match play where we felt Dimitri van den Bergh was more likely and closer to that second major title, more so than this past weekend. But it's come now, and it has reminded everyone that on his day, he deserves to be recognised as a contender for these titles. And on his day, he has got the game to go and beat former major winners. And we saw it in the final, beat the world number one and the reigning world champion.
Well, speaking of the world number one and reigning world champion, Luke Humphries fell just shy of a fifth consecutive ranking televised title. Despite that valiant comeback from 7-2 down and 10-8 down, he had a chance to win it in the decider, missing 2 darts, one at double 16 and one at double 8. How much of a setback, though, will it be for the world number one?
Yeah, I don't think it will be for Luke, and it's probably easy to say this after all the success that he's had in these major events over the last 5 or 6 months, winning 4 of them, becoming, as we've just said, world champion, world number one. But one of the big takeaways for me from that final, there was a lot of talk about the winner, Dimitri van den Bergh, his pace of play at times, but there was also a lot of people on social media commenting about just how well Luke Humphries spoke after losing that final and how he did handle the defeat, because he was classy in defeat, and it would have been easy to give short and sharp answers in that post-match interview on the stage. You want to get off the stage as soon as possible. You've just lost out in a final, but Luke really did speak with a lot of class, and he showed again why he is such a great ambassador for this game. And it was a very different experience, I think, for Luke Humphries this time round, going into a major final as a big favourite. He was being backed by the bookies to win, a clear favourite, whereas his other major finals that he's had, he's either been a slight underdog or he's been the slight favourite against Price, Cross, Van Gerwen. He's come up against established names, former world champions, and he's beaten all three of them. The world final, there was a lot of hype surrounding his opponent, Luke Littler, and he overcame that to win as well. But heading into this final on Sunday at the UK Open as the favourite, the man that most people in the venue, most people watching at home were expecting to win, isn't something that you would have experienced before, particularly, like I say, in a final of that magnitude, in a major final. But throughout the weekend, he looked to be in cruise control. He was dropping 2 legs against Stephen Bunting, 2 against Ricky Evans on that final day to make the final. But against Dimitri, for whatever reason, he did look a little bit flat. And he mentioned it'd been 5 days on the road. It'd been a long time on the road playing darts. Was it the pace of the game, not being able to get into a rhythm and a flow? I don't know. But I know that Luke, he's not one that wants to make excuses that often. But it did appear to affect him. And credit to Dimitri, because whatever chances he was getting when Luke was missing those doubles, he was there to step in. And he did go 7-2 up, 8-4. That 130 finish to go 8-4 up, that would have finished off a lot of players, and it would have been easy for Luke Humphries to go, it's not my night. But he battled back, got it back to 8-all, got it back to 10-10 from 10-8 down, and in that decider was first to a double. He carved out that chance in the last leg to win it, and he will be disappointed. Anyone is. If you miss darts to win a major title, you are going to be disappointed. But I don't think there's many other players that would have had that resolve to come back from the 7-2, the 8-4, and get that chance to win it. So to miss match darts, yeah, it's going to sting for a while. But again, something that he's not experienced before. But I think the fact is that this final has come in the midst of where we are in the season. We've got the Premier League still going on, the Euro Tour about to start this weekend. There are going to be plenty of opportunities for him to bounce back. And like I say, I think he's got a very wise head on his shoulders. He's had a lot of success in the last few months. And I think this is just going to be viewed as a bump in the road. And he'll be back to winning ways very soon.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement. I think his post-match interview on stage during the trophy presentation summed it up. His goals now to win a UK Open and to do so next year. And I don't think he was saying that, just to temper the blow. I think he was saying that out of confidence. He believes that he is the favorite in every tournament, and he believes that he has a live chance, if not a very, very good chance, to win every single event he enters, because he is the best player in the world. At the very least, he's the most consistently good player in the world. It might not have yet come through on any given night at the Premier League this year, but it has come through in many other events. That's why he won the World Championship. It's why he now made the final of the UK Open, as you mentioned, without getting even challenged before that final. He is the player to beat. When push comes to shove and when it actually matters, it's very, very difficult to beat him. Even if you get 7-2 up, even if you get 8-4 up, even if you have 10-8 up. Dimitri van den Bergh missing those three match darts to win at 11-8, missing a few more in subsequent legs, because Luke Humphries is going to put you under pressure and he's going to take the chance if you give it to him. And the only chance he didn't take was that one in that deciding leg. And it was surprising. You thought, and Dimitri van den Bergh clearly looked like he thought, that the match had gotten away, that Luke Humphries was going to take it. And I think Luke Humphries thought he was going to take it, and he did. Sure. Dimitri van den Bergh is the winner. Dimitri van den Bergh is the deserved champion. He was the better player for most of that match. But Luke Humphries isn't going to go out of that match thinking that was a missed opportunity. He's going to go out of that thinking, I have to take that opportunity next time, and I'm going to take it next time. I don't think this is going to be a setback, other than it means he needs to wait another year to win a UK Open, even if it now means it's not just the only major final he's lost, but now the only one he's lost twice. It's a temporary setback, if anything, because he knows how good of a player he is. He knows what he needs to do, and he knows that if he's in that situation again, he's not going to let Dimitri van den Bergh off the hook. He's not going to let whoever is up against him off the hook. He's going to close the deal, and he knows from the rest of the week that he has the game to do it. That's why nobody won more than a couple legs off of him before that final. It's not a setback. It's just It's just a loss that he's going to do everything in his power to atone for next time.
Plenty more chat about the UK Open to come, but before we do, let's bring in the man himself. He is the newly crowned UK Open champion, a two-time major champion in the PDC. Here's our chat with Dimitri van den Bergh. I'm pleased to say we're joined by the newly crowned UK Open champion, Dimitri van den Bergh. Thanks for the time, Dimitri. How are you doing?
Hi guys, first of all, thank you for having me on the podcast, and I am obviously buzzing. It's been a crazy weekend. Wow.
We're talking just 2 days on from your title win at the weekend in Minehead. You become a two-time major winner. What have the last few days been like after what was one of the biggest moments of your career so far?
Very surreal. It's a lot to take in on a short period of time because, I was like, how am I going to feel? What am I going to do? Because I need to play again next week, and we've got to start from zero. We've got to start from the first round. So, I didn't really know what to think, how to feel, what to say. But at the end of the day, just busy with what I need to do best and focus on myself.
And we saw Stephen Bunting after he won the Masters. He put the trophy in the car, put a seatbelt around it. What was it like for you travelling back to Belgium with that trophy? Were you holding it on the plane, or did you manage to fit it in your suitcase?
So we was going back by car, 7 or 8 hour drive. But the trophy was completely wrapped up in bubble plastic, and I've kept it that way just for security. And yesterday when we got home in the house, I unwrapped it and I put it next to me in the couch, and I made a selfie out of it. I sent it to my manager, and I said to him, I've got a new housemate that I've got to welcome.
Well, we'll come back to the UK Open in a moment, but I just want to circle back to when we last had you on the show. You were chatting with my co-host Burton, and it was during your first Premier League season, and you just finished short of the playoffs. It was obviously a very different experience back then. No fans, then the small crowd towards the end. How did you find that first year playing in the Premier League?
Very simple. When you were selected for Premier League, that on its own is a massive honour and definitely a great achievement. So for the first time that I was selected, it didn't matter how the Premier League was going to be played at. For me, I was part of it. My name was not just in the hat, my name got selected as well. So for me, that was an incredible feeling. And obviously, I knew that wasn't the real Premier League, and I have experienced that one last year. Huge difference between them. And either way, from both of them, I've learned a lot. I think in the first Premier League, I played really well from start till the end. I had some great games, good wins, but also great games and tough defeats. But it's just part of the Premier League. You're playing against the best out of the best in the whole business.
And later that year, we see the full crowds come back, and a special moment, I'm sure it was for you, playing at the Winter Gardens for the first time, but as the reigning World Match Play champion, going all the way to the final. What was that week like for you?
Yeah, that was another amazing feeling. That it was the first time ever that I played at Winter Gardens. So for me, even though I was the reigning champion, for me it was still my debut at the Winter Gardens. And for some reason, I think the connection between me and the Winter Gardens was straight away on it, because I managed to defend my title all the way to the final. And what can you say when you achieve such things? I think being proud is right on the top of the list.
Certainly is, and fast forward to 2022, one of the highlights has got to be going back to back on the World Series, winning 2 titles on the spin. What did that mean to you at the time?
When I won them 2 tournaments, I remember that I was playing so well that I was dominating them 2 tournaments to play. It doesn't matter who was in front of me. I was just not rattled by anything. I just kept going. I just kept my opponents, putting them under pressure. I got chances, I took them, and it was absolutely insane that I went to these 2 tournaments and I breezed through them. So definitely a massive proud feeling there to do in the on seniors level, such performances on a consistent base, and that just boosts your confidence so bad in like such a great way. I mean, it's like so bad was in this moment actually used in a controversial way, in like it's so amazing to have achieved that.
And those 2 titles, as well as a semi-final at the World Championship at the end of that year, that helped you get back in the Premier League. You had the full crowds, but a lot's changed for you since we last spoke. You've become a dad, you were living in England, now you've moved back home to Belgium. But how much did you take away from your time living here in the UK?
Well, just very simple. When it comes to living in the UK, we just got to say once again, thank you so much to Minehead and Damon Heta. It was an amazing feeling to have them sharing a house with us in actually a beautiful house that we made a good home to, and darts still is the priority for the both of us. We still want to make a living out of it and want to achieve our dreams for ourselves and our family. But it was a really amazing experience just because of Megan and Damon being a part of it, and they turned into family for us. And even we're not living in the same house anymore, we still got weekly contacts. We're stive fully committed to each other and like wishing each other the very best, and we want to get the best out of each other, especially when we play each other. So it's I've taken a lot on board with myself, and especially I've learned a lot, and we practiced so much. It was a really cool experience to go through the adventure.
And on the flip side, you are back home in Belgium now. For our listeners who haven't been before, give us somewhere that you'd recommend to visit or do if they were travelling over.
It's a little bit depends. I wouldn't come to Belgium because you want to have great temperatures and you want to have a nice coast holiday. I don't think that's the greatest idea. But what can you do? You could go to Bruges. Bruges is a place that is a little bit called as Little Venice. So it's a bit similar with all little channels that you can go on a boat and go around. Antwerp is a very historic city. If you're interested in history, then that's definitely not a bad thing to go, because it's a really proud and old city. Then what else could you do? You go to the south of Belgium, which is called the Ardennes, and then you literally go into to mountains, forests. You can go in those wooden huts and make it a camping experience. That's definitely things you could do.
Well, some good recommendations there, and let's get on to this year then. And you mentioned over the weekend that you've been working with a sports psychologist. We've seen other players do the same in the past, but how did it come about for you working with one as well?
Funny enough, it's exactly because I've heard in the past that others are doing it that I saw them achieving things that I was like, oh, wow, look at that, it's such a turnaround, well done to them. And I was still like doing my best to work with myself and try to fix it all myself. I've always been a bit sketchy towards it. I always thought like, you know what, a sports psychologist, that's probably the last plan to save my career. But because I just heard it more often that players are talking to sport drinks and they actually are doing better, playing better, getting stronger, I said to myself, give it a go. We'll see what it does. We'll see what it says. If you give it a go and it works for you, amazing. If it doesn't work for yourself, then at least you know you've tried it. You gave it a go. But I've got to say it's going good. I'm doing whatever I can, and I've all of a sudden achieved something that I was not expecting so quickly.
Yeah, we saw that at the weekend at the UK Open, and just looking at your run to the title, you started out away from that main stage. You're on the outside boards against Brendan Dolan on Friday night, Vincent van der Voort on Saturday afternoon. Just talk us through those wins, because it looked like you had to fight for both of them.
Yeah, obviously playing against Brendan Dolan, playing against Vincent van der Voort, these are two players who already are long in the business, two players that know what to do to even grind wins out. So basically I'm saying you'll never beat them until you hit the winning double. So for me that was like, especially in the first game, Brendan, I was leading him 6-1, and for some reason I started to get nervous. I started to lose self-control, and he battled back, and all of a sudden I went from 6-1 up, I went 7-6 down, and then I've literally just done again what I've learned from my sports drink, and he said, like, work the structure, do your tips. And I've also got to say, Mike the Decker was standing there watching my game, and hearing his voice definitely helped me going through that game and digged in the win myself. The last 4 legs I won in 14, 11, 11 and 13. So a massive relief for myself as soon as I hit that double. And to be fair, since then, since I've managed to win that game, I haven't really been very nervous towards other games. Like, I felt very in self-control, knowing what I was doing, getting the business done, until, when I went 10-8 up, and it was like, ooh, you're only one leg away from winning this title, Dimi. And I started to feel the nerves again. I started to feel the pressure again. So I was saying to myself, all right, take a bit of time. It's fine. This is something that you recognize as an important moment. So make sure that when you go to the jockey, you're at least ready for it. And besides saying it, I've also done it. I only turned around and I felt good to handle the pressure. And my first shot was a couple of trebles. So that alone just shows that my mental game and all the tricks that I'm learning is just working. It's just fitting the puzzle.
Yeah, we certainly saw that, and the wins, they kept coming. You beat Johnny Clayton, Martin Lukeman, your good friend, your roommate for the weekends, Damon Heta, in the semi-finals. You're through to the final. You were the first semi-final, so what was it like being backstage? You start the tournament on the Friday, there's a busy practice room. Now you're the only one in there waiting to see who you're going to play in the final.
Yeah, I definitely noticed from day to day a bit difference, because, like you say, the first day you're in there and you're like having board 3 up to 8, I think. So many boards, which also means so many players. And there I was. I knew who I had to play. You have a few of your friends there. You can practice with a few of them. You can get yourself ready for the game. And the next day, half of the players been gone. Half of the boards were gone. So I was like, oh, yeah, it's a bit empty. It's a bit chilly in here. So the next day, then you play in the quarterfinals, and I was having a feeling of like, ooh, there's only 8 of us left, and yeah, what to do? How to try and motivate yourself? Because before that, I was talking with this player, I was talking with that player, having a little laugh, enjoy yourself. But now it was more, it felt a whole lot more down to business. Like finals day, this is the day that can turn your life around, and it was totally different, the experience. But it was good for me that Damo and I was playing in the quarters. We both didn't have to play each other in the quarters, so that also done us a good thing. And we just practiced together. We got each other ready for our game. And wow, what an amazing game Damo played against Luke Littler. Absolutely incredible quarterfinal. So, it's a beautiful experience.
Yeah, those two, Damon Heta, Luke Littler, serving up a match of the year contender, as did you and Luke Humphries in the final. You touched on it a little bit. We could be here all night talking about it because there was so much that went on in that game, such an exciting game to watch as a fan. But I'll just take you to those final moments of that final leg and the 64 finish, cleaning 2 darts, you fall to the floor. What was that moment like as you're being announced as the champion after a match that went right down to the wire?
Yeah, it definitely went down to the wire. I know that I managed to get 10-8 in front of him, even though I was 8-4 up or 8-3. I'm not sure. I think 8-4 is definitely the number that I went up against him. And I was like, come on, you're doing well, keep believing. And then he just came battling back, and I think we got back to 8-8. And then after 8-8, I for some reason turned it around again, and I got 10-8 up. And I was like, come on, you're doing it. Just keep going, keep focusing on what you can do. And yeah, I actually did play really strong, good leg stem too, because I was after 12 on 56, and then my double for some reason didn't want it to go. Tops was going quite all right, and then that moment he was not getting hit, and then leg after I missed my 12 dart leg on double 12 with also scoring 2 180s. So I know that I was handling the pressure well. I know that I was keep pushing and I keep trying, but yeah, I still had to survive 2 match darts to win the title. And funny enough, after missing 5 on tops, it was tops in the end that actually done the deal.
Yeah, I'll come back to that tops in a moment. I've got to mention as well that you are one of my Nan's favourite players, and she wanted to ask you, do you find talking to yourself makes it easier to concentrate when you're under pressure? And she also mentioned that you were in top form, great finish on Sunday night.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the things that for me works. Just working in yourself with your own mind. But sometimes I also do like to talk while I'm throwing my darts. So, for instance, I get a lot of times to the hockey, and then I say to myself, get your first dart straight, throw straight, and then the rest will follow. So after I throw my first dart, then sometimes I can just tell myself, oh, that's a good dart. Just ease up the throw, just to make sure that there's not too much tension in it, that you don't go short, that you don't pull the dart, that you just keep doing what you're doing, keep going into your rhythm as soon as you get to the oche. And that definitely works for me. So, Nan, first of all, thank you for being a supporter. Thank you for calling me the favorite player. That's really sweet of the Nan. And also, say her thank you that she caught her eye on something that works for me.
Yeah, she enjoyed watching you. And you mentioned about the tops as well. I remember your first major win at the match play. You'd very rarely go for tops. You'd try and avoid it at all costs. But it was your friend at some key parts of that final. It was the match winner on Sunday night. So do you feel more comfortable in that area of the board now?
Funny enough, I am feeling really comfortable when it comes to tops. I work hard on the board, work hard off the board, and it's all about melting them two elements together and make sure that you believe in what you do, you believe in why you put your time in there, to afterwards, when it's needed the most, take the advantage out of it. And I've got to say, the whole weekend, I have hit a lot of times my tops. So I'm happy that I'm not overthinking things. I just can look up to the oche, well, at least stand on the oche, look up to the board, and doesn't matter which target I've got to go for, I've also got the self-belief that I'm able to hit it, and no doubts on it. That's the most important. There's not a second thought, there's no doubt on it.
We've seen before that you've grabbed the microphone after a big win on stage and addressed the crowd. Were you tempted to take the microphone from Dan Dawson and chat with the crowd on Sunday night?
No. There was nothing in my mind that was going to let that trophy slip out of my hands or go somewhere. I was like, I was standing there in disbelief that I managed to actually get the gold and get my give my granddad finally a win after he passed away. So that, for me, it's amazing. He was for me, he still is a gold person, and now I managed to win him some gold.
A few more before we let you go. Back in the top 8 in the world, you're a 2-time major champion, and as luck would have it, we mentioned it before we started, your next event is going to be in Belgium on the Euro Tour this weekend. Just how much are you looking forward to that first walk-on as the UK Open champion and be in front of your home crowd?
All of these words that you just said is just so crazy that's about me. I'm just listening here to whatever you're saying and whatever you're asking, and I'm like, whoa. That's what I've just achieved. Like, every time it's like a reality check. It's like, whoa, I am back in the top 8 in the world. I have got my second major win. Next week, well, this week to be fair, in a couple of days, I will be playing in my home crowd for our Belgian fans in Belgium, and it's going to be my very first time I will be called the UK Open champion. And once again, it's going to be in Belgium. Like, whoa, it's... how do you cope with things like this? Like, how do you move on? How do you need to make sure that you take out of it what you need to push forward and to, get more of these wins? Because that feeling of being a winner, that's very addictive. I've got to be honest. It's very addictive.
Yeah, it's going to be a special moment on Friday, and we've got to mention the Belgian fans as well, because we've said it on the show before. They are one of the most knowledgeable, respectful crowds in the PDC. You've taught them well.
Well, I've only got to say that thank you so much to all the people in Belgium who loves the darts and come to watch that. They actually have the good behavior, the respectful behavior, because that's why a lot of players on the tour say, we love to go to Belgium, but everybody that, even if you're playing in Belgium, they'll be cheering for you, but as soon as you're playing, then they'll just keep their respect, they'll keep their quietness. They're not going to all of a sudden be whistling or something or booing you. They maybe sometimes do on a double, but in general, everybody just loves to play in front of this crowd. So I am very proud to be a Belgian.
And lastly, we had the pleasure of chatting with Andrew Gilden after he won the UK Open last year, and he celebrated by going to his car and grabbing a pot noodle. How did your celebrations on Sunday night compare to his?
It was going back to the apartment, laying down in the couch while my mate was making me some supper, and it was chicken curry and rice. So for me, that was all I needed, nothing more. I think I've finished another bottle or two of water because I was very thirsty. And after that, it was just calling with all my friends and my family and being in disbelief of what I've I've just done there. I personally think that UK Open is one of the hardest games to win because the draw will always be done after the rounds are finished, like all games of the round is finished, and then as soon as that's done, then they need to do the draw. Then they need to let you know as soon as possible which game you play, which state you play, and if you play first game, then straight away you've got to go. But if you're not playing first game, then you can all right, I still got 20 minutes, half an hour, I can chill. Okay, it's all good. I'll be ready. But if it's not like that, and you got to play as quick as possible, then you could turn into a bit of a hurry. You could maybe, run past yourself in I'm not ready. I'm not feeling it. So UK Open can be such a crazy tournament, and to maybe to be able winning this one, yeah, that's above and beyond. I'm loving it.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest to win. It's one of the tournaments that we love to watch, and you are on that list of winners now, the UK Open. Dimitri, thanks very much for taking the time to chat to us. Congratulations again on that title, and wish you all the best for what else is to come in 2024 as well.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it, and also your time and having me on the podcast. Good health for everybody.
Thanks again to Dimitri for joining us now, continuing our look back at the UK Open. We've spoken about the two finalists, the winner, Dimitri van den Bergh, the runner-up, Luke Humphries, but what were your other main takeaways from this year's FA Cup of Darts?
Oh, there were other people who competed? No, there were many takeaways. Even if there were surprisingly few ton-plus averages across the week, there were a lot of averages in the high 90s, but surprisingly few ton-plus. But it didn't in any way detract from the tournament we have. And I want to start by talking about the two semifinalists before I briefly touch on 5 other names I have written down here. Ricky Evans and Damon Heta. For both of them, surprising in one case, but for both of them, a first major singles televised semifinal. Damon Heta, after all those quarterfinal defeats, finally won through a quarterfinal to regain the record for Jamie Caven for most PDC titles without making it to a televised singles semifinal. But Damon Heta, that 106 average against Luke Littler in the quarterfinals, it's not just, an early contender and probably favorite for match of the year. It's one of the best matches I've ever seen. I mean, Damon Heta went off stage at the first break averaging nearly 126, and he was fortunate to be ahead. He was still averaging at the second break 115, 116, and okay, the averages came down, but they didn't come down that much. And the thing was, for most of that match, both of them were playing at that same standard. Both of them were throwing a 180 after 180. Both of them were on down after 9 darts down to double digits. There was one leg where Damon Heta was left on 36 after 9 and didn't get a look. That was the standard they were both playing at. And to be able to withstand all those punches, especially with his quarterfinal history to date, with many performances where he was not just underwhelming, but poor in quarterfinals, to be able to push that all aside against Luke Littler and play at that level was absolutely phenomenal. And it verifies that Damon Heta is one of the best players in the world. He is arguably now the best player who's yet to win a major. Maybe you could say Luke Littler, but he hasn't been around as long. Damon Heta is a phenomenal world-class player and is on the cusp of the Premier League next year if he's not currently in. Obviously, it's early in the season. But okay, he just didn't have it in the semifinal. He wasn't able to push on from that performance. But what a performance. But I also want to mention Ricky Evans. And I don't even want to talk about Ricky Evans' weekend that much because he was pretty good the first few matches. He fell off in the quarterfinals and semifinals significantly. He was not the same player on Sunday as he had been on Friday and Saturday, where he was pretty good on Friday and Saturday. But he still managed to beat Rob Cross in a poor match and just had nothing left against Luke Humphries. But the reason I want to mention Ricky Evans is it's easy to forget that match against Nathan Aspinall because he averaged, again, I mentioned, ton plus averages. He averaged only 99 in that match at the World Championships, but it was a good 99. It was a great 99. He dominated that match. It was a world-class 99 average. It was it was the equivalent of a bad 104, where you can think a player was just outplayed. He was always behind, didn't have darts at double. So yes, he averaged 103, 104, but it wasn't punished by him having a bunch of legs where he had darts at double to lower that average. It was the exact opposite. He had in every leg was ahead. Every leg was punishing. And that was a good 99 average, or great 99 average, because every leg he had a dart, a double, and 9 of the 10 he hit him. It was one of the best performances of the World Championships, and it just didn't get the credit it deserved because it was only a 99 average, or that's what it was on paper. That's the level that Ricky Evans is at. He is a much, much better player now than he was when he was a top 32 player making a Euro Tour final, getting into a pair of world match plays. He never had this consistency. He never had this intelligence and confidence to step back, stop when he felt he was blocked or needed to think where to throw, and to then figure it out and restart and know that it wasn't going to mess up his rhythm. Ricky Evans looks like a player who is on the up and is about to win his first title. He's playing that well. And I obviously spent a lot of time talking about those two. I want to quickly mention Martin Lukeman, 2 ton-plus averages against Gary Anderson and Jermaine Wadamena. After regressing a bit last year after his breakthrough 2022, he looks maybe even better in 2024 than that breakthrough year. Luke Littler, ton-plus in every match. I mean, that match against Damon Heta I've already talked about, but it's just another great tournament for Luke Littler. But got to mention a fourth Luke. We've mentioned, obviously, Humphries before, Littler, Lukeman. Well, what about Luke Woodhouse continuing his ascendancy, a run to the last 16, 2 last leg deciders against former world champions, came through them. Another really good performance this weekend from Luke Woodhouse. Peter Wright, maybe he's on the way back, a ton-plus in one match. Played a great match against Stephen Bunting. And finally, Mensur Suljovic and that win over Michael Van Guren. Is Mensur back? He thinks he is. Still a little too early to tell, but he's definitely playing some good darts right now.
Yeah, I think we all hope that this is Mensur coming back. And you mentioned a few of the things that I was going to mention, and I've got to start with that quarter-final between Damon Heta and Luke Littler, which you mentioned, because if that doesn't win Match of the Year in our awards, then whatever match tops that this year, we are going to be in for one heck of a treat, aren't we? Because that game on Sunday, that was a classic, and a lot of the people that I was speaking to this week, they weren't talking about who won the title, they were just talking about that game. That was the first thing they said. Did you watch Damon Heta against Luke Littler? It was a very special game, wasn't it? You mentioned some of the stats surrounding that game, and yeah, it was a fascinating watch, and obviously would have loved it to have gone to a last leg and had that extra leg of it, but I think it added to the drama that Luke Littler missed those darts. I think it was at double 10 to make it 9-all. He was the banker, wasn't he, to get that double 10. His trusty double 10 misses it, and Damon Heta steps in and gets over the line and wins it. So what a game to watch. I'm running out of words to say about that one, but I've got to say as well, you said it, for Damon Heta, it was a groundbreaking win, getting him through to that major semi-final. Ricky Evans as well, getting to that stage for the first time in his career. Big milestones for the pair of them. And Martin Lukeman as well, another player that you mentioned, one of the more eye-catching performers from the weekend. It did end a little bit flat in the end on Sunday in the quarterfinals, but what a run he had to the final day. The game with Gary Anderson, it was on the second stage on Saturday night, averaging a ton, but 10 out of 13 on the doubles. And to beat Gary Anderson 10-5 by that margin, and himself averaging 102, an incredible display from Martin Lukeman, and he played very well throughout the whole weekend. I think the only thing that was stopping him before Sunday was Dart Connect, of all things, because his game with Leonard Gates on the Friday had, I think it was around a 25-30 minute delay because Dart Connect crashed, but he came back and won the game in the end. But I should mention as well our question of the week, sponsored by Condor Darts. We asked our listeners what their favourite celebration was from the weekend. The options: young Jenson Walker, 17 years old, one of the Riley's qualifiers, channeling his inner Dean Stanley, running off the stage after winning on the main stage. Graham Usher in the multi-boardroom, that epic with Ryan Searle, 8-2 up, goes 9-8 down, survives match darts in the decider, cleans up the ton in 2 darts to win it. What a celebration that was. And your man Mensur Suljovic, the other option in the poll, where you could have other as well, but Mensur Suljovic, after knocking out an off-colour Michael Van Guren on that Friday night. And I think that was one of the takeaways for me, was seeing that old guard, if you like, Mensur getting that win on the main stage, and also Mervyn King making the last 16 as well. 2 players that we had a listener question fairly recently asking about these 2 players. Are we going to see them in the seniors next year? Well, the results of the weekend for Mervyn and Mensur, they'll be hoping there's going to be more of them to come, because if they can get results like that, then they're going to hopefully have a better chance of avoiding slipping out of that top 64. And my last point from the weekend, I've got to give a mention to that shirt from Benjamin Drew Royce, a Dart Shirt of the Year contender. Ricky Evans, he's had a great weekend, first major semi-final, but I think he's got a fight on his hands now to keep that Shirt of the Year award.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to see we're already, both of us, talking about our year-end awards, and in my case, talking about Premier League. It is, it's already March. We're very close to that. But let's change tack a little bit. UK Open is done, but it's now time for the return of the greatest tour in professional sport, the Euro Tour, as a new look Euro Tour gets underway on Friday with the return of the Belgian Darts Open in Visa. How excited, though, are you for the return of the greatest tour in professional sports?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I think a lot has been made of the changes to the Euro Tour this year with the new qualifying structure that's now in place. We've spoke about it on the show. There's been a slight amendment with the way that the prize money works. It was announced by the PDC recently that the pre-qualified players from the main order of merit or the Pro Tour order of merit that lose their first match, they're not going to have that prize money added to the order of merits, which is the right move. Before then, it looked like if you qualified via that order of merit and not the Pro Tour order of merit, there was going to be an advantage because those players were going to keep that money on the rankings. But that's not the case. And anyway, enough about the new structure. It is in place. We know almost all of the lineup of players in action, just the four host nation qualifiers. They've not been confirmed yet at the time of recording, but I think the big thing for me with the Euro Tours, it's the Sundays. I like mostly it's a quiet end to the week. There's not much going on, but you can just chill out, watch 2 sessions of darts from the last 16 down to the final, a bit of Phil Collins before the final as well. So I'm looking forward to those Sundays coming back, but I'm also interested to see the draw when it does come out, because looking at that lineup of players starting out in round one, there's a lot of potential for some blockbuster matchups right from the get-go in that first round on Friday. And we already know it's going to be a homecoming for Dimitri van den Bergh. You heard from him earlier. The first time being introduced as the new UK Open champion is going to come in front of that home crowd. He's in that pool of players in round one, as are Nathan Aspinall, Peter Wright, 2 players involved in the Premier League. They're going to hot foot it from wherever it's being played this week to then play on the Friday night, as will Luke Littler, who won through the tour card holder qualifiers. And I'm pleased as well to see Mike Dedeker. He's one of the 10 names to come through that qualifier as well. We've spoke about him on the show. He's been playing some great stuff so far this season. He's going to get to play in one of his home events. Gary Anderson, a seed for a Euro Tour as well. There was a time when we thought we might not see him on the Euro Tour again. He did come back last year through a few of those qualifiers to get back in. Results on the floor means he comes in as one of the 16 seeds. So there is a potential Sunday afternoon meeting with Gerwyn Price as well. And lastly, I mentioned it to Dimitri earlier, but just that Belgian crowd as well, because we've spoke about it on the show before, but they do give the players the best of order, and they also make a great atmosphere at the same time. And it's a bit of a throwback in some ways. So hopefully we're going to see more of the same of that, and they've not learned the Yaya Kolo Toure chant just yet.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of the same things we're looking forward to. I love the European Tour. It's such a great weekend. Unfortunately, this one I'm going to miss nearly the entire thing because I'll be at a sporting event all weekend, not competing, but my father's in town and we're going to a wrestling tournament. So I'm not going to be able to see most of the Euro Tour, but I will be following the scores and I will be following what's going on. And one thing I will definitely be following is the debut of Luke Littler on the European Tour. We don't know who he's going to play yet. And actually, maybe on Friday I'll be able to catch some of that because the tournament won't have started. But depending on who he draws, there's every chance that he'll make it to Saturday. There's every chance he'll make it to Sunday. There's every chance he'll lift the trophy on Sunday night. If he's averaging over a ton in every match like he was in Minehead, it's going to take a pretty darn good performance to beat him. Granted, there are people like Damon Heta who've proven they can do that. But I am looking forward to seeing how Luke Littler does and how Luke Littler performs. I still have some doubts about him as where his game is right now and how he handles losing, but they're minor doubts. We know for the most part he's going to bring a good performance, and his first time on the Euro Tour is something I'm looking forward to. But a few other things, the performance of Peter Wright, who it seems like he's back now. He'll have to enter from the first round, a weird position for him to be in, but a justified one after where his game's been the last couple of years. But Peter Wright is now the reigning European champion, and he makes his Euro Tour debut for this season as that European champion. Is he going to continue the fine form he's had over the last few weeks in Visa? You have to think yes now, which is not something we would have said a few months ago when it was just a surprise that he won the European Championship, and then it was back to business as usual thereafter. Also curious to see Stephen Bunting continuing to play well, his first Euro Tour since winning his first major. But then finally, you mentioned it, I'm going to mention it as well, Dimitri van den Bergh going on stage, presumably as one of the last, if not the last match on Friday night, because it's a home crowd and he is going to be introduced as the reigning UK Open champion for the first time in front of his home country fans. The reception that he's going to receive. And would it be something if he's playing one of the Belgians as well? What a match that can be. But what a start to the European Tour for season 2024.
Yeah, it should be good. And we'll be back in a moment to finish up the show with the mailbag, some of your listener questions. But before we do that, let's bring in our final guest on the show. He's a friend of the show. He is the main man of the Sportsman Management Company. Here's our chat with Mac Elkin. I'm pleased to say we're joined by the boss of the Sportsman Management Company and the first ever weekly Dartscast Manager of the Year award winner, Mac Elkin. Thanks for the time again, Mac. How are you doing?
Alex, I'm really good, mate. Thank you. Nice to get a couple of days at home, but back on the road again tomorrow. So you're lucky you got this time, and I've got the time to do this. But obviously, for you, I'll do anything, mate.
Top man. Well, the last time we had you on, you were with my co-host Burton, and you joked with him that he didn't big you enough for the intro. How was my effort there?
Superb, mate. Listen, you're way above Burton. Always have been. These plastic Americans, they're just not with it, are they?
Oh, well, I've got to speak to him later, so I'll say no comment to that. But there is only one place to start, and that is Sunday night. Dimitri van den Bergh, one of the players in your stable, winning the UK Open. You were there in Minehead. What's it like as a manager watching a game like that? Had so much drama, went all the way to a decider in that final.
Yeah, obviously I've been doing it for years. I've learned how to control my heart rate and keep myself quite calm. I know sometimes the players look over towards me, so if they see that I'm nervous or anything, it could give them bad vibes, and I don't want that. So over the years, I've learned to experience certain things and relax more. So I just, in my head, I was going all over the place, but like outside, I was just trying to keep calm and kept looking at Dimmy. I didn't really watch the TVs or the scores. I just kept looking at Dimmy, and if he needed help, he'd look over, and I'd just like give him a little G up and go, "Come on, you're doing okay." And then, as we all know, at 10-8, Dimmy went up to throw and then stopped, walked back to the table to compose himself, and then it all started to go a bit wrong. And I think unfairly, in a way, that the crowd got on his back and everything, because up until then it was a great final. Yes, Dimmy done his things, but Dimmy always does his things. And but at 10-8 when he stops, to be honest, I like him to stay in a rhythm, but he does what's good for him. And the crowd got on his back, but he went up to the board. He started off with 2 trebles again, and so apart from missing the doubles, he done everything right. And it was only at 10-8 when he started to miss a few doubles, and the crowd were laughing and geeing him and booing him and what have you, that it started to go a little bit wrong, and I thought we could lose this after being in so control. But look, at the end of the day, Luke had 2 darts at a double. I didn't expect him to miss. He did, and then Dimmy took out the 64 with 2 cracking darts. So it's a shame for Luke. Listen, he's a brilliant world champion. Fantastic. I've always said from day one, he's a great talker. He's very good at what he does, and he's always level-headed, and he had superb words for Dimmy, and I've got the utmost respect for Luke Humphries for that. But I've always had the utmost respect for Luke anyway, so I didn't expect nothing different. But yeah, it was... Inside, I was absolutely in bits, so I was a total mess. But on the outside, I just tried to stay calm in case Dimmy looks over. and I was there for him just to give him that little, come on, Dimmy, you can do this.
You and Dimmy, it's a partnership. It's been together for a while. He joined your stable in 2013. January this year, he signed a 3-year extension as well. So what does this win mean for him to become a 2-time major champion?
Oh, do you know, so we've talked about it. Like, we're very close. He's more like a son to me. My son gets on really well with him, and they talk a lot about things away from darts, because my son's not into darts. He's into everything but not darts. And they talk a lot away, so he gets Dimmy's mind off darts, talking about other things. So for him to sign an extension was superb. Obviously, I'd like to stay with him for the rest of his career, and I think he'd like the same, because when we started negotiations for this contract, it sounds a little bit silly, but he was scared to talk to me because he didn't want to upset me, and so on and so on. But in the end, when we did finally spoke, every time I wanted to speak to him, the time was wrong. He just lost at the Worlds or just lost at the Players' Championship. I didn't want to speak to him before that tournament because I didn't want his mind being somewhere else. So everything just seemed to be wrong at the wrong time. And then January, there's a few days left, and we've gone, listen, this has got to happen now. And so we spoke, and it probably took about 10 minutes, if that, and we just agreed what we agreed, and we said, that's it. And next thing, I said, right, I'm not even hanging about now. I booked a flight, jumped on a plane. Actually, it was the world final, because I sat in his house and we watched the two Lukes play that absolutely amazing world final together. So yeah, he signed the contract that day. Although we pre-signed it and emailed it over, I still wanted it in writing. I wanted to see it for myself, if you know what I mean.
Definitely. Well, last one on Dimmy before we move on to some other players in your stable. And there's been a lot of changes in his life since he won that first major at the World Match Play. He moved to England, become a dad. Now he's moved back to Belgium. You've been by his side through all of it, so you've seen him lifting that trophy at the weekend. That must have made it even extra special as well.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, 100% it did. Like I say, with Dimmy, last year he had a lot of problems. I mean, he just got a new child, and he hasn't seen her grow up. And he was away. He got Premier League, got all the World Series. I was going with him as well, but I wasn't throwing darts, and I was absolutely shattered. And then coming back playing floor tournaments, he couldn't really miss tournaments because where he was in the floor ranking, he needed to play these tournaments to get into the European. So whereas the big name players could, Gezi Price, Nathan, Michael, they could all have time out and have a rest and have a couple of weeks off and go on holiday. That didn't happen to Dimmy. And at the end of the year, he stopped practicing when he went home because he wanted to be with his daughter. His game dropped off, and then his head started to get a bit messy. And after the Worlds, I mean, don't get me wrong, he lost first round or second round when he comes in against Florian Empel at the Worlds. But he didn't play bad, he played fantastic. And then Florian took out, I think it was a 1-5-2. And the whole game just flipped on its head. But until then, Dimmy was superb. And then it didn't really drop off. Florian actually just went on the rampage, just went ridiculously good, which we know he can do because he'd done it last time against Dimmy, and went on to win the game. But we sat there and we talked about a psychologist and everything. And he ended up, he got a guy that worked for a couple of the football teams in Belgium and spoke to him. I've met him as well. I've sat in the company. He came to Leicester with us, and a lovely man. And he's been helping Dimmy a lot, just telling him what to do. And a lot of what Dimmy done on stage on Sunday was because the psychologist told him to do it. Like he said, if you address the board and you're not right, walk away. You're not there for everyone. You're there for you. The final's a reward, not a punishment. So don't just do it for other people. Do it for you. So at 10-8, Dimmy had give it all. In fact, I'll go back just a little bit. At 8, when Dimmy took out 130 to go 8-4 up, he celebrated like he'd won the title. It was a huge shot. It went straight up to the board after celebrating and everything. All the emotions coming out. His heart rate is like 110 miles an hour. Everything, adrenaline's flowing. His hands are shaking. It went straight up to the board and through, and he hit 45. And then lost the next 4 legs, in fact 5 legs on the trot. No, 4 legs, sorry. 4 legs on the trot. And Luke got it back to 8-8. So when he went 10-8 up, he went straight to the board, and then he obviously remembered what the psychologist had told him. You're there for you. Take your time. Do what you've got to do. Readdress it if you don't feel right. So he walked to the table to get a drink, and the crowd started booing. And he tried to explain to the crowd, if you see, he was pointing at his head and going, I'm shaking, I just need a drink. And the crowd are booing more and more. And then he's like tried to compose himself. But then he walked to the board and he had a cracking, I think he started off with 2 trebles. Yes, he lost the leg and then lost the next leg because he missed doubles. That's down to nerves and experience. He's playing the world champion, the world number 1. He's going to win his first major for 4 years, you know, or first TV tournament. Some people don't call it a major. But in the end, he got the job done, so we can say it worked. In hindsight, I suppose it's not the kind of thing you want to see, but if I'm a football manager and I'm playing Manchester City, I'm going to put 10 men behind the ball because I don't want to play attacking football and get beat 9-0. I want to try and keep it tight because if I keep getting beat, my job's on the line. I'm going to get sacked. But if I put 10 men behind the ball and get a result, I'm in a job next week and the week after and the week after. So it's a results business, and he had to do what was right for him. I think a lot of the stick he's getting is unfair. I don't like to see people get booed. I don't like to see slow play, but at the end of the day, he's not a cheat like a lot of people called him. It may be tactics, I don't know. It depends how you look at it. But he just does what's for him. And sometimes it's not pretty, but he don't always play like that. But at the moment, he's going through a lot of difficulties. And it was the final against the best player in the world. And Luke came out and said it. I'm not angry with him. I think he's done great. He's had to do what he's had to do. And I totally respect Luke for the way he spoke. And I'd say it again like I started the interview, absolutely top class world champion Luke Humphries is. Really is.
Yeah, can't argue with that. And well, let's get on to some of your other players then. And we have to mention young Jenson Walker, 17 years old. He's hit a 9-darter on the Challenge Tour this year, won a match on the main stage at the UK Open on Friday afternoon. He's certainly one to watch, isn't he?
You know what, honestly, Alex. So, Sean Casey Ball phoned me up and he said, Matt, would you become ambassador for the Coventry Youth Academy? I said, it'll be an honour, Sean, I'd love to do that. I said, what do you want me to do? He said, well, nothing really, just be an ambassador. If you can pop in now and again, or even if you can bring a player down. So anyway, they had an exhibition with Wayne Mardell the one day. So me and Jose had nothing to do. So I said to Jose, do you fancy coming down? See the lads? He's like, 100%, don't want no money, Jose. He'll do it for the fun, he'll do it for the boys and the girls. Everyone that was there, he's not interested in the money side of it. So we rocked up there. It was a nice surprise for the kids. Nobody expected us to turn up. We've walked in. Jose's took his darts and his dart shirt. So Sean said, "What? Will you have a game?" Jose's going, "Yeah, of course." Sean's going, "Like, we'll give you some expenses and that." And Jose's like, "I don't want nothing. Keep it. Put it back into the academy." Anyway, there was the doubles match. Wayne got drawn out against someone, and Jose got drawn with Jenson Walker. So the interceptors, I'm sitting there and I've looked at this kid, he's come off and lovely. Honestly, I can't even explain how nice he is. There was just not a bad bone in his body, he's just so nice. Anyway, he came up, introduced himself and everything, and I sat and I watched and I thought, this kid's got something. He's really got something. He's not overawed by anything, and he was just getting on with it. And it was a great night anyway, blah, 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 blah. A few months later down the line, sat there, I kept watching his results, and he was doing okay. So I phoned Sean up. I said, Sean, I'm interested in signing Jenson. What's your thoughts? He's gone, mate, he needs it, he'll love it, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, met Sean at Sean's office, and then Jenson and his father came over. We had a chat. I told him what I could do for him and everything. Offered him a deal, shook my hands, and the rest is history. He's just grown and grown and grown. And then obviously played in the UK Open, and we said just go up there on stage. Doesn't matter what happens, enjoy yourself. If you get beat 6-0, you get beat 6-0. The achievement is you've got here, and that is a massive achievement for you. And you're 17 years old. Obviously everyone's looking at Luke, who's 17 years old, and he's just ripping trees up for fun. You know, the guy's amazing. So it's difficult for any other young 17-year-old to follow that path, because people think, because he can do it, they can do it. But Jenson's got his feet on the ground and everything, and he played Sebastian, who is an absolutely amazing player as well. And I had the belief Jenson could beat him as long as he kept his focus. And if you watch Jenson, he did keep his focus. Every now and again, he'd have a glance over at his family. I think we was all going crazy, and he was the only one who kept his feet on the ground. Yeah. And he got the win, and he was great. He was really disappointed next game. But you know what? I said to him, look, you've done it on stage in front of like thousands of people on TV as well. I said, that's a huge achievement for your age, from where you've come from to where you are now in a year. And he's like every other 17-year-old. He wants it all now, kind of thing, do you know what I mean? But he's got a great family around him. And I tell him all the time, and Paul Woodage, who works beside me and everything, like, he's always looking after him and nurturing him and everything. We're always saying to talk to him, listen, don't run before you can walk. And I point to Dimitri. I said, Dimitri, it was 4 years before Dimitri became half decent. He couldn't win a game on the floor when Dimitri was playing in the PDC. The UK Opens were going, and I think he went 22 games without earning money. He'd win a couple in the UK Open, but then you had to win 3 games before you got any money. In the qualifiers, I mean, not the UK Open, in the qualifiers. And we used to have 6 qualifiers to get to the UK Open. And like, I point to Dimmy and say, look, he went through a lot, and look where he is now. And so I'm really proud of Jenson. He's an absolutely fantastic acquisition to our team, and such a lovely guy. And I really hope, and I'm convinced he will kick on and become a great player. Really do. Honestly, I believe that.
Yeah, he certainly made a name for himself at the weekend. And 3 other young players that you've got in your stable, they're already established on the PDC tour, or they've just come onto the tour. You've got Kevin Doets, Adam Gawlas, they've both signed extensions to their deals with you. Dom Taylor, he's signed up this year as well. What are your hopes for them 3 this year?
Well, Kevin has kicked on. Towards the end of last year, it looked like he was going to lose his tour card, and then he qualified for the Players, he qualified for the World Championships, played superb against Michael Smith in the World Championship, as we all seen, and he's just kept it going. And it's difficult for players like Kevin, Dom, Adam, because they all work at home. They're not like, they can't afford to leave their jobs. I know it's professional, but they still have to work, and now it's midweek. They have to juggle work around darts. They've got great managers at home and everything, obviously, because at work, obviously, because they let them have the time off, and they know that the darts is important to them. But when you're working all day, and then you've got to come home, and then you've got to put another 2-3 hours practicing on the board, like you've got girlfriend, like Adam's, Kevin's just got a new child. So, you know, it's difficult to juggle everything around, but Kevin's kicking on. Adam's on the PDC, he's doing okay. In the youth, I think it's affected him a lot. In the development, or should I say, it's affected him a lot. It's like he can't really lift it all. Is it maybe the same as Owen? Is it because you're playing PDC and then you're going straight into development tour, and you're playing like 7 days on the trot, or you're away from home, and it's quite difficult because the development tour is 2 tournaments in a day, and you're there at like 8 o'clock in the morning, you're starting at 10 o'clock, and if you're playing well, especially the second one, you're going through to 8, 9 o'clock at night, get some food, and it's all of a sudden it's 10:30, 11 o'clock. 9 times out of 10 you can't go to sleep straight away if you've had a good day, because you're thinking about it and your mind's racing. So I understand, and it's difficult to juggle, but it's all down. It's all experience. It's all a learning curve, and this is why they do it. And this is what these young fellas have got to. They've got to learn. They've got to learn to adjust if they want to be a top player. But I believe in them. Dom Taylor, local lad to Minehead. He's from Bristol. Started off the year, he was throwing phenomenal averages locally. One match he won 6-1 in I think it was a Steve Brown ADC, maybe, I don't know. But he had 117 average, if I think that was right. He was just brilliant. But obviously when you come over to PDC, it's a little bit different. Even though you're playing well, you're punished. The slight miss, you're punished. And I think he's finding it at the moment a little bit difficult to adjust. But he'll come. I've got the utmost faith in him, and that's why I signed him. But going on to Dom, I had Dom obviously with Will Adamson previously, so although Will looked after him and everything, I always kept a close eye on Dom. But now he's signed for our company because it's the PDC, and he's like round the family part of it and all that, which he's loving. We've just got to get the results out. But I'm really happy with everyone at the moment. I'm not going to lie. They're not ripping up trees, but they're being consistent at the moment. There's a few players that will kick on, hopefully. But it's new. All the new tour card holders are playing okay. Jeffrey de Graaf's another one. He's playing okay without getting the results. Played great in the UK Open against Matty Dennons and got beat. He played Gary Anderson in Leicester. Had 104 average. Gary had 111. Got beat. It's insane the standard that these boys are coming into, and I think it's a bit of a shock to the system. But you have to learn to adjust.
Couple away from darts before we let you go, we can see from your social media that you love a trip to Tenerife. I've been a couple of times, I can vouch for it as well, but what is your favourite part about Tenerife?
My favourite part about Tenerife is going to see my friends. I've got Jay Dean and John, who own the Vault Bar, who sponsor Callan Ridge, by the way. They own the Vault Bar in Los Cristianos. That is probably the best bar in Tenerife. It's great. It's a family atmosphere. They have live bands every day. They have drag artists in the day. The food's amazing. There's just nothing I can say that's bad about that bar. And they are two of my bestest friends in the world. I love them to bits. We have a group chat with Fox, who you had on not long ago. And the banter we have is just, honestly, it's brutal, but it's funny. And we can say anything. There's never any animosity. And also, two of my other friends that are singers over there, Stuart and Corey, I follow them around wherever they are. I'll go to a bar, sit and listen to them. I've heard them a million times, and every time I listen to them, they're brilliant. So yeah, even if I go on my own, I'm never alone. As places go, I love Costa Rica, but most of all, obviously, love Las Americas and down the Golden Mile. Love the restaurants. So yeah, and just the weather, of course. I love the weather. And obviously, very good, very nice has become a friend of mine. Although I've stopped posting videos now, I thought it got a bit boring now.
Good times. And lastly, we're not going to mention my football team or Burton's, but your team, Aston Villa, 4th in the Premier League when we're talking. Are you starting to dream of Champions League football at Villa Park next season?
Listen, honestly, I'm happy with Europe. If we finish 7th again and get Conference League, I'm happy. Of course I want Champions League. I want us to win the league. We're not going to, but that's what I want, and that's what we all strive for. But I've been to every game in Europe, and I've loved it. I've been to Bosnia. I'd never go to Bosnia. I went to Bosnia, bought 2 flights. On the way back, we had a nightmare because our flight got cancelled, and then the game before Kevin at the Worlds as well. So we had to get a taxi to Sarajevo, and then Sarajevo into Zagreb by flight, then sit in the airport, and then Zagreb to Heathrow, and I made it 7 to Ali Pali. But that's the kind of sacrifice that I'll make for the Villa. And I'm off 8 o'clock in the morning, so I'm going down to Heathrow at 4 o'clock in the morning, flying at 8, out to Amsterdam, spend a day in the Dam, and then on Thursday go to game, Ajax, hopefully smash them, so I can give Jermaine a load of stick because he's also going the game, and then me and Jermaine are driving straight to Belgium after the game for the Belgian darts, where Dimmy is going to be his first tournament back, which is brilliant, is in Belgium as the UK Open champion. So hopefully he'll get a fantastic, well, I'll just say hopefully, I know he will. He'll get a brilliant reception.
Happy days. Well, Mac, it's always a pleasure to get you on the show. Thanks very much for giving us some of your time. Congratulations again on the big win for Dimitri, and wish you and all your players all the best for the rest of 2024 as well.
Alex, it's always a pleasure to come on, mate. You haven't spoken to me for 4 years. I thought you forgot about me. But now I'm back. I'm back, mate, and I'm going to be here for a long time, hopefully. But listen, to all of you, you do a great job, and you know how much I love your podcast. So you take care. Keep up the good work, mate.
Thanks again to Mac for joining us, and we'll finish up the show with the mailbag. First question comes from Warren Allsworth, who says, should the PDC have an off week for the Premier League before the UK Open? New format of potentially 3 big games in one night and then straight into a major doesn't seem right.
I mean, I agree that 3 games and then into a major doesn't seem right, but I think the solution is to go back to the old Premier League format or figure out some other format that doesn't have that. Because, well, I mean, I think we're all in agreement that the current Premier League format is just... It ran its course already, and yet they still brought it back this year. I think that's the solution, to change the Premier League format. But it makes sense to have the Premier League night in Exeter the night before the UK Open. It's a little over an hour by car to Minehead. Obviously, you can't take train to Minehead, and the players aren't going to be taking train. They're going to be driving. So it's not that far off, and anyone in the Premier League isn't going to be playing Friday afternoon. They'll have till Friday night. I don't think playing on Thursday night is that big of a detriment. So while Warren has a lot of great thoughts and a lot of great questions on this one, I'm going to disagree with him on, at least in general. But I think the solution is change the Premier League format, and I will keep saying that until they do.
Yeah, I think they need to change that Premier League format. I'm getting a bit sick and tired of watching Emmerdale on Thursday nights, but I do think it is a good idea from Warren, and we've, as you say, we've got used to that Premier League night in Exeter on the Thursday night, then going into the UK Open in Minehead on the Friday. And the last 3 years, if you include this year, it has been a player outside the Premier League that's won the UK Open, and I think I'm right in saying as well that they've beaten a Premier League player in the final. 2021, it was different during COVID. James Wade, he was a late call up to the Premier League, did win the UK Open that year, but it was behind closed doors. We had the blocks. It wasn't the Thursday after Thursday. Before then, it's not been too uncommon to see Premier League players winning the UK Open. Michael van Gerwen's done it. I recall Peter Wright throwing that monster average, I think it was against Adrian Lewis in the Premier League, and then winning his first major a few days later. But back then, as you say, that the format was different. It was the one game a night. The current format of the Premier League, it is a lot more taxing on the players, especially if you are making that final and playing the 3 games on the night before. So I think a week break, it would be a good idea, but whether it's something that the PDC can implement into the calendar remains to be seen. I know they try and lock in the dates for the Premier League quite soonish, so it might already be a non-starter for 2025. But yeah, I think if they could have that clear week for those Premier League players to then go straight into the UK Open, I don't think you'd have any complaints from those 8 players. It would just make the Premier League even longer than it already is.
Now, Stephen Mann asked, should players who lose in the first round of the UK Open cash? It seems unfair. He says it seems unfair that some have qualified via routes like the Challenge Tour or Riley's qualifier, but don't earn any cash.
Yeah, I think it's probably more unfair on those Riley's qualifiers. Now, I'll come back to that in a minute, but it's only really been since, I think, last year, 2023, that we've seen money come in for the second round of the UK Open. So if you go back before then, if you were starting in round 1, you had to win 2 games to get into the money. So we have seen that prize pot go up in the last couple of years, that the second round losers, they now do bank a grand for getting that far. But for the first round, they are getting nothing. And we do see players qualify via various routes for that first round. The new tour card holders, you've got the players from the Challenge Tour, the Development Tour, and okay, the tour card holders, they are automatically in the field. The Challenge Tour, Development Tour players, it's an added bonus for them. But yeah, I'm mainly looking at the Riley's qualifiers here, because you've spent your £10 to enter the qualifier, you've won it. Yes, you get your Red Riley's polo shirt to wear. I'm not sure whether they get the accommodation included or they get maybe a discounted players rate for staying at Minehead. Don't quote me on that, but I think £500 for those 32 players in the first round losers, it's an extra 16 grand. I reckon the PDC can find that somewhere. So just to give a little something to those first round losers, and yeah, I think it would be a nice addition, like I say, particularly for those Riley's qualifiers, because yes, it is a big occasion for them. Regardless of if they get any money or not, they are going to be going there. It is, for some of them, maybe a once in a lifetime opportunity, but just to give them that little something for them to go away with if they do lose in the first round, I think would be a nice touch.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think it's eventually going to happen. You mentioned that it was just 2 years ago that even second round losers weren't getting paid, and you go back to before the changes right now to only have 16 Riley's qualifiers, but to give the spots to the Development and Challenge Tour started with 2019. You go back to 2018, you had to make the last 64 in order to get any money. If you got eliminated on Friday afternoon, that was it. There was no payment at all. So it's not been that long that even people that went out on Friday afternoon got something. So I think we're moving in that direction. I agree that it seems like we're almost to that point where it's a bit odd that they're not. I think in the next couple of years, that's eventually going to happen. If maybe next year, maybe the year after that, as the prize money keeps growing, and it seems like it's going to keep growing, especially as the sport continues to get more and more audience bases, as well as with Luke Littler, more attention even in places where the sport already has visibility. So I think it will happen. I think it would be a good thing for it to happen. I hope it happens next year, but if not, I think in the next couple of years it will, because it should. You shouldn't be playing in a major tournament and leave in the PDC and leaving it without any prize money.
And our last listener question for this week, it comes from one of Peter Wright's former practice partners, Zach Ward. He says, Dimmy, gamesmanship or just playing his own game?
I think he's just playing his own game. I mean, you look. It was even more pronounced against Damon Heta, a player that, not officially in the same management stable, but is very close friends with that management stable, and they're, obviously spend a lot of time together and respect each other. He wouldn't have done that to Damon Heta if it was a tactic. He was doing what he needed to do to find his game and play his best darts. I don't think it was a tactic. It certainly is pronounced at times, and I don't know if it helped. Look at when he did slow down in that match against Luke Humphries. His performance, I'm not going to say dropped, but he wasn't hitting the shots with the same clutchness and the same regularity. He might still have a big score and visit. He might still have the overall same average, but he was just missing a few more of those checkout combinations. So I'm not positive it actually was helping him in that match. And I wonder if he was overthinking it just a little bit too much, but I don't think it was gamesmanship. I think he wants to make sure his head is in the right place, but sometimes that might lead to just putting your head in the wrong place by trying too hard.
Yeah, I've got to say, first of all, I am a big advocate for playing your own game. Andrew Sinclair of Inside the WDF Lakeside commentary fame, he can vouch for that. But I guess with this one, it does depend on who you ask. And I was chatting to a few people at work on Monday, and it was quite split. You had some people saying it was cheating and they didn't even bother watching the final because it put them off, whereas others were saying they saw nothing wrong with it. And there is no time limit, as far as I'm aware, on how long you can take to throw all three darts. But I think there's got to be an unwritten rule where if you go past a certain time and you do run the risk of being regarded as unsportsmanlike and trying to put your opponent off. And with Dimitri, I said it on Twitter at the weekend, his cue action, some people call it the throw, is right up there as one of the best in the game. It's a lovely action, and if he could sell it to people, he wouldn't have to play himself. He'd make a fortune off that alone. But we have seen there has been a backlash from some fans saying that Dimitri crossed that line and went too far, taking too much time. And he's not the first player. He won't be the last to take that extra bit of time at moments in games. And I don't think this is something, like you say, I don't think it's something that he does to put the opponents off. I really don't think that. I think it's more for his own benefit to make sure that he's ready to play that next throw, that next leg, whatever it might be. And we see others do it, maybe not to that level, but just take that extra few seconds to compose themselves when they're going for a double, or they might go to the table, take a drink of water. And I think it's something that I'm sure people are going to keep an eye on. It is going to be scrutinised a little bit more over the coming weeks, the coming months, to see if it does become more regular. So maybe it is something that he does have to have a look at and be a bit more careful about it in the future. But I think it is something that he might have to work on to avoid maybe having that gamesmanship label thrown at him. But like you, I don't think it's gamesmanship. I think it is purely for his own benefit to make sure that in that moment he's ready to play and play to the best of his ability.
Anything else for this week?
A few things we've got to say. A few thank yous to our guests, to Dimitri and Mac for their time this week. Our chat with Jackie Oakley, the ITV Darts presenter, by the way, that is going to be on next week's show. We had planned for two other guests on the show this week, but we thought as we had the chance to speak with the champ and his gaffer, let's get them both on this week. Thank you to our sponsors, to Darts Corner and Condor Darts, for their continued support. Links in the description. Do go and check them out. Thank you to everyone for listening as well. And we also wanted to sign off the show this week with a mention of the sad news that this week Tony Green has passed away. He's one of the voices of darts, particularly from that golden era of the 1980s. Commentated on the BDO World Championships up until his retirement in 2017. I think he only missed one of them in the first 40 years of the event. And a lot of our listeners, they'll have seen him on Bullseye. Often gets repeated here in the UK. He was a big part to play in that show's success as well. And I was fortunate to have a chat with Tony a few years ago when he announced his retirement. A top bloke, his passion for the game, and I think just his appreciation for the life and experiences that darts gave him. He is going to be someone that is going to be missed, but never forgotten. So just sending our thoughts to his family, friends, anyone else that was close to him at this time.
Yeah, echoing that. Obviously, one of the not faces but voices of, well, I guess also faces to Bullseye, but obviously voices of darts for so many decades and so many monumental moments in the early history of the televised sport. One of darting legends as a result. And I've been told not a bad player in his own right back in the day. But we'll be back next week to recap the first weekend of Euro Tour action, look ahead to some Pro Tours and other stuff coming up in March. Please keep your questions coming. Let us know anyone you want to get on. We only have a couple handfuls worth of players who we haven't had on yet. So we're going to try to work through some of those over the coming months as we really get into gear for season 2024.